Welcome to Shell Shock, the story of the Turtle WoW hack of July 2024. This program intends to chronicle how everything occurred, review the damage, and inform the Turtle WoW and private server community in general about how to protect yourself against future data breaches. A disclaimer: real people were harmed by this event. Sharing personally identifiable information publicly is unethical and unjustified regardless of how anyone feels about the Turtle WoW project. This report completely and thoroughly condemns the actions by the hacker. All information used in the report will be used strictly in the interest of the community it affects and to help educate. This is where the story starts for most people. On Friday, July 26, 2024, around 7 a.m. server time, players on the Nordinar server noticed some very disturbing server announcements. Turtle WoW was hacked. It wasn't long before services were taken down. Between 7:17 and 7:45 a.m. that day, the team realized the truth of the hacker statements. But that early on, they still didn't know the extent of the damage. All Turtle WoW servers would go down for the next 56 hours. So what exactly happened? To best answer that, we need to go back in time, several days before the hack went public, on the 24th. People were noticing something bizarre. Players were disconnecting frequently, and when they tried to log back on, they saw the patcher client fire up. It was enough to rouse the team, who were evidently suspicious already. They took down the login servers, and later they took down the whole turtlewow.org domain. What they didn't know was that the hacker had already compromised their system. Let's break here to explain roughly how the hack worked. To get there though, we need to understand the Turtle network a little. So imagine this tree. For most players and GMs, there's only a few ways to interface with the Turtle WoW network. Logging into the web portal, logging into the game, maybe posting on the changelog or the forums. These public user interfaces make up the tree trunk, branches, and leaves. However, any online game has other hidden interfaces, and much like how the roots of a tree can be just as massive as the tree itself, there are other points of contact with the main Turtle WoW system. For instance, the live radio broadcast, private test realms, developer nodes, server management access, file hosting. To the average community member, these places are not needed for gameplay and are essentially invisible, but they are integral to the larger system itself. All of these hidden access methods are still used for management and development, and just like any other part of the tree, they can be attacked. However, because these invisible places attract the least attention, the underground system itself is also watched the least. On condition of anonymity, I learned that it was one of these hidden systems that was compromised first. While the exact method the hacker used to obtain a password is unclear, what is well understood is that someone with authorized access to these hidden systems either didn't use different passwords or two-factor authentication, which was the first step in a classic escalation of permissions hack. An escalation of permission hack is when an attacker gains unauthorized access to a system and uses that to try to leverage even more unauthorized privileges. Once a hacker gets more administrative rights in a system, their influence can spread throughout the system, like an illness. All the while, no one else is even aware anything is wrong since nothing unauthorized is technically happening. So once the hacker got a foothold, much of the system was compromised. As a quick aside, everyone should be using different passwords and two-factor authentication. They are the best defense against this type of attack. Passwords can be discovered, guessed, or stolen, and they are all the time. So a first easy step is using different passwords, which will require a hacker to do twice the work for a second password. With two-factor authentication, notifications are sent to a separate secure system when any new access is granted. A hacker won't likely have access to an entirely separate system, and thus, most escalation of permission attacks would be stymied. Back to the timeline. We know that before the patch, there were signs something was up, and admittedly, the team was suspicious as well. But as to when the hack itself started, it is hard to say. Hacks like this can take weeks or months to pull off. And with that level of dedication and sophistication, it really begs the question, who was this hacker, and what were they after? To put it bluntly, no one but the hacker themselves knows the truth of the matter. Some have taken to calling him Daniel for simplicity's sake, and I will do so here as well. There certainly are theories ranging from a hacker from Blizzard to a disgruntled player. Much like anyone online, you can only judge a person by their actions. Much of what I've been able to learn about this character has been from two sources: a downloadable repository of files he gathered from servers before releasing them to the public, and from internal conversations with team members who actually spoke with him during the event. Let's start with Daniel's documents. The file dump had a lot of data to go through, and I categorized them as 3 progressively larger layers. The topmost layer included Daniel's manifesto, for the lack of a better term, and a guide on how to victimize other players. So far, not a great start, and while I'd love to pick apart his manifesto publicly, I'll just briefly summarize his reasons for doing what he did so we can get a clearer picture. First, he itemizes all the things he did in grandiose terms, but offers that he's still holding back some more information. The first section finishes with a simple assertion that there is no doxing material. We'll put a pin in that for now. In the next segment, he claims that lack security with the server was to blame for his actions, in the same way an arsonist might speak about a fire suppression system. Of course, if poor security was truly the issue, no one would have had their information leaked. Daniel could have just spoken privately with the team. Indeed, concerns about security vanish once he reveals that the real reason he did what he did was because he asserts that members of the team 7 years ago were bad people on another private server. He doesn't offer any hard proof, but there is a lot more to go through, so maybe it'll be in the next layer. Layer 2 are primarily leaked screenshots of internal conversations Daniel scraped together, most of them from private Turtle team chat rooms. At first glance, some of them are pretty concerning for the Turtle WoW community, and, as I've stated before, I don't want to have the team harassed any more than they already have been by showing those screenshots. But they certainly did deserve some explanation from the team. Perhaps Daniel's true motivations will become clear now. So I took all 97 of them and categorized them into their subject matter. Here's that list. 8 were about other private servers, 11 were concerned with advertisement, another 18 were about struggling with copyright issues, there were 7 actually showing development progress, 8 posts were about financial problems for the team, 14 were specifically struggles the SEA servers were experiencing, 4 were statements made about players on Turtle WoW, 6 were Daniel gloating about the hack, and finally 21 were non sequiturs, bad jokes, or just too odd to understand why they were even there. I'll admit, I was a little perplexed. I thought maybe since Daniel so thoroughly hacked everything, I'd see a smoking gun of corruption. Instead, I found logs of private discussions about the difficulties of managing Turtle WoW. I also recognized that those conversations were likely clipped in the least favorable way, so I sought some clarification from the team. Well, I learned a lot to set things straight. The person raving about the issues with the Chinese Turtle WoW servers is not only the team lead for that branch of Turtle WoW, but Blizzard is now back officially in China. This problem means the team will have to tighten its belt to continue covering development costs. Naturally, competitive statements made about other servers make sense when trying to budget and determine if players and donations move elsewhere. As part of the discussions about the leak, I did hear it confirmed by Accolix that they are considering ways of having subscriptions without losing free-to-play players. In truth, competition for players' attention is a big part of what makes innovation in the private server space to begin with. In many ways, those at the management level need to run operations like a business. Of course, all of this is happening while there have been many setbacks with advertising because of copyright issues, which no doubt is a cause for even more consternation. I could see that frustration boiling over into saying things about particular players, but given the context of a private chat where a person can vent, it doesn't feel particularly malicious given that, according to records, no actions have been taken against any of those players named. So after all that, the only real takeaway I had as a community member was that I wish the team would be more transparent about the health of the project. Perhaps since the team does have so many people on staff, it is now a little disingenuous to characterize Turtle WoW as a passion project. So I think I can understand who this Daniel is a little more, but there was something missing. I'd have to take the final step and go into what I call data hell. The final layer of the data dump was a release of server command logs, source code, and of course logs of things that occurred on the server. I will tell you right now, I am not a computer data analyst. I had to learn how to use whole new software just to look at half the data in the dump. The final layer was so big in comparison that I came to the realization that up until now, I had only seen 2% of the actual data. Altogether, I spent 25 hours for this research. Rather than bore you about SQL database configuration and reading bash shell scripts, I'll tell you what I've been able to confirm and is most relevant. As far as corruption and any shady dealings going on, of the one or two suspect things I found, none could be verified or substantiated in any real way. And even if they are confirmed, none point to malfeasance during Turtle WoW. Perhaps there is something I missed, but for now I can at least characterize elements of the data that are relevant for those affected. The leaked data includes email addresses, usernames, forum usernames, and IP addresses. There are also many accessory logs for all forms of chat on the server, looting, trades, join dates, and just about every other in-game metric you could conceive of. Once I knew my way around the software, finding my own personal details didn't take very long. Remember when Daniel said no doxing? Well, let's circle back to that, because there are a host of email addresses that are just people's real-world names, sitting next to their IP addresses. Even worse is that while Daniel purports not to dox anyone, in the discussions he had with the team, from what they reported to me, he regularly used the threat of doxing to bully and terrorize team members. Perhaps it is a matter of semantics, but I think I finally have a good idea who this hacker is. Someone with an axe to grind over something that happened 7 years ago that he believes is intrinsically related to Turtle WoW. Someone who screams crude and racist things the second they get any notoriety. Someone who violates people's privacy under a thinly veiled excuse of wanting better security. Someone who will go to all great lengths to protect their insecurity and personal failings by making everyone else's life worse. Daniel is a clown. Even in a world where all that Daniel alleges is true about server staff, you would think that there would be more actual hard evidence of wrongdoing in Turtle WoW's 6-year history. He was very clear that he had everything, that he had all the data. Perhaps that best explains his motives. He was wrong, and rather than being that, he threw a tantrum by bundling a chunk of source code and logs together with out-of-context conversation screenshots. I have reviewed what HackerMan released, and from 6 years worth of cherry-picked data, the worst thing I can see that has happened on Turtle WoW has been Daniel. So where does that leave things for everyone else? What can be learned from this saga? Sadly, not much can be done now that this information is out for the average player. Some things to take away are easy methods to protect yourself from self-important clowns like Daniel. When signing up for any online service, use email addresses you don't care about and don't have your name as an address. Remember from before to use different passwords and, if available, enable two-factor authentication. If you are concerned enough about your location being made known, even though IP addresses aren't very precise, you can use a VPN to obscure your location from any server you connect to. And finally, never give out personal details in a chat, especially one that you know is being logged. And the Turtle WoW team surely learned something from this embarrassing fiasco. Aside from the primary security issue, and a few missteps with communication, their handling of the hack was nothing short of exemplary. On the condition of anonymity, I did have independent sources confirm that their system hardware was replaced and their security apparatus has been fully audited to prevent something like this from happening again. They did a lot more than they needed to, despite Daniel's claim that they don't care at all about security. Sadly, because private servers are in a legal gray area, there is very little chance of any criminal elements being brought to justice. To conclude, remember to be careful with your personal data. No information system is perfect, and the internet is full of clowns. Turtle WoW might have dropped the ball, but they also bore the brunt of this hack in losing time and money to fix the problem. Despite Daniel's efforts and the server downtime, I witnessed more unity than I have ever seen in my years playing here myself. So in a twist of irony, the hack may have had the opposite of its intended effect. Which is kind of funny. And that makes sense. You're supposed to laugh at clowns.